From FX perspective, that is foreign exchange perspective, Islamic financial institution does place their funds. They do foreign trading, forex trading. There are just two rules to it. First one is whatever the name of the transaction is, because in treasury and in FX desk we use various terms. For instance, we use terms spot market, we use Tom 1, Tom 2, and things like that. They all are considered, apparently a spot transaction. But only ready transaction, which means transaction that is being settled within the day, within one single day, it is considered as a spot transaction and it is actual sale. Even if there is a delay of 1 day for settlement, 2 days for settlement in FX transaction, it will be future transaction. And for that perspective, it needs to be structured in a Sharia compliant manner because future sale is not allowed. We have discussed this in the previous session. So in order to avoid future sale, we need to structure it in such a manner whereby the party selling it or the party buying these FX can issue a unilateral promise of buying or selling. There is a difference between promise and actual sale. What they do is initially on day one, they issue a promise, and subsequently on the settlement day, which may be the second day, third day, fourth day, or even the 10th day, nth day, they formally makes offer and acceptance, and based on that offer and acceptance, actual sale transaction takes place, which is based on the promised price initiated or issued on day one. So it's a hedging product as well, whereby on day one, you issue a promise to the other party that I will purchase or I will sell these X number of dollars at Y price. And on that particular day, you formally execute offer and acceptance and makes a formal sale for these transactions. That's how Islamic financial institutions do their forex trading. The best part and best slide of the day, that is Jazakumullah khairan. I can see smiles on many faces. So the floor is open for questions if you have. I would love to answer. Jazakumullah khairan. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for the nice presentation, Mr. Farhan Usmani. Now we've come to the end of the day, but before closing the session, we will have some time for a Q&A session. So if there are any questions, we can go for it. We'll start from there.
Okay, yes, please.
Since you are coming from Egypt, about Islamic finance in UK after Brexit situation.
Okay, mashallah, assalamu alaikum. Good question. I mean, people talk about Brexit, that is Britain exiting Europe, and I'm not going to go into the politics of it, but actually this has stimulated and has become a catalyst for growth in Islamic finance, because I think I'm involved in the all-party parliamentary group for Islamic finance as well as other initiatives. UK was, in terms of rhetoric, in terms of language, was saying that, claiming to be the hub of Islamic finance, but actually, the biggest trade partner for UK is EU, Europe. Since this is going to not be the case anymore, as in terms of the business main direct dealings, UK has gone out to a lot of Muslim countries, especially GCC-based countries, and has tried to sign deals. In the last 2 years, I've traveled myself with Theresa May, the current Prime Minister, and various other government officials to look at Islamic finance as a specific opportunity. So before, Islamic finance was a byproduct, if you like, was a second on the agenda. But now, because they're losing the opportunity of major trade with the EU, they're actually trying to stimulate this. So I think it's a win-win situation from an Islamic finance point of view. Oh yeah, I'm happy to share that with you. Yeah, okay.
Assalamu alaikum and very good afternoon. I'm Dr. Farhan from Istanbul, Sabahattin, Zaim University. Thanks for all the presentation actually. If you go to the most of the conferences or like Sharia forum, they try to discuss what we call is the contract and the structure of the product actually. And here also same like murabaha, musharaka muntanakisa, ijara, and so on and so forth actually. But when we come to the pricing actually, is like linked to like interest rate or the benchmarking of interest rate actually. So I know that actually I read a lot of books by Sheikh Taqi Usmani as well. So he gave the fatwa saying that is benchmarking interest rate is halal in Islam. So maybe I would like to ask the question from Dr. Imran, what's the justification of such fatwa just saying that the benchmarking interest rate is halal actually? Thank you.
आपको अरबी में टाइप करना आता है? अच्छा, उसमें वो आदमी खड़ा हुआ है। हाँ, आप करें।
I'll answer the question. So benchmarking the Islamic rating or any of that, whether it's rental or profit to LIBOR, Euribor, any of that, the reason, the justification which you're asking for, why is it not why is it permissible and what's the justification for that? I will give you something in very basic logical terms and that should give you justification for it. Bottle of water. I would like to price this bottle of water to a can of beer, right? So if the can of beer's price goes up or down, this bottle, I'm just saying, will be benchmarked to that. That doesn't make the contents, which is water in here, haram. It's just linking the price to that. Of course, in an ideal world, we'd like to have our own benchmark and our own, but we're talking about international markets here. An international market, you have to use LIBOR and Euribor are the most recognized, most used interbank, especially lending and deals, they use that. So it doesn't make the content or the actual structure or the transaction or the contract or the elements haram. You're just benchmarking them because that's the most common used benchmark. We have, in terms of Thomson Reuters, have come up with an Islamic benchmark, but that's not still being used because the international markets, whether it's the Lloyds of London or the major capital markets, they use Euribor or LIBOR especially. Despite the fact that in the last 2 years there was a major LIBOR crisis. Because LIBOR was being fixed. I don't know if you've been following this. The British Bankers Association, if you like to do your readings, so BBA have got a report out if you want to do the BBA report. But despite that, I mean, that is the most recognized, most used benchmark. So it doesn't make it haram. So you ask for justification, that's the reason. I think Sheikh Taqi has mentioned that as well.
Just like to add one thing from industry and practice perspective.
Thank you.
From practitioners' perspective, as you all know, that Islamic banks, they are one of the alternate options for the government's financing and for the corporate world. Now, when we talk about corporate, they are relatively indifferent because they need to present their case to the board of directors, whereby usually the banks and the relationship with banks are decided. So, in order to understand the financing requirements and the price that the institution, especially the corporate, is willing to pay to the financing institution, they need to compare apple with apples, oranges with oranges. Now, if you come up with anything else, let's say if in competition there are total 10 banks to apply and to compete for a financing project by a multinational corporate, let's say, and 8 of them are conventional banks and 2 or 3 of them are, let's say, Islamic. So they want their pricing to be competitive in a manner whereby they can match it with others, and they can, compare it whether they are economical, viable or not. From that perspective, if let's say Islamic banks come up with another alternate benchmark, and they present, okay, I'll provide you funds on murabaha basis as IBOR plus, let's say, 1. And conventional say, we'll provide funds on LIBOR plus 1. They say, okay, I need to know what IBOR will be because plus 1, both are same. But what if LIBOR is different and IBOR is different? So let's play safe and goes with the conventional one. So from that perspective, these are relatively secondary issues. First one, we need to penetrate in the market. We need to convince them that it's a viable alternate, which is not that different. It's just that it's a real trading activity whereby it will support your business as well. So from that perspective, we use currently. Please.
Basically, you know that the permissibility or impermissibility of the transaction does not depend on the rate or pricing. It depends on underlying contract. If the underlying contract is right, so at whatever rate or price the parties agree upon, it is considered halal. If it is not agreed upon that particular price and the underlying transaction was not allowed, then it was not allowed. So here, murabaha transaction, the rate has been decided, the price has been decided, then the transaction is allowed. But question is that why they are using that rate, which is the interest rate. Question is that, okay, it is right that they are using a particular rate. And once you fix a transaction, a rate or price, then the transaction is valid. But why they don't use the rate of for selling the cloth or purchasing the house or purchasing the, for example, chairs? Because your rate is considered in which market you are doing. Okay? So you are now in a financial market. So in a financial market, so you cannot deviate from that particular industry. If, for example, if you deviate from a particular market rate, then in either case, you will fail. If you increase so much, then you will fail. If you decrease so much, you will be failed.
Exactly. That's a problem now in Islamic finance. Actually, Mufti Taqi Usmani this morning is mentioned the trade and the equity base. That is maybe the right solution, I guess. Thank you.
You know that fatwa should be contrary for a certain time, because according to Islam, international money is gold and silver. Mm-hmm. We couldn't use interest as an indicator.
Yeah,
in that case, we will be all the time depend on the interest system.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is a very, responsible fatwa.
Yeah.
And Mufti should prepare for Akhirah how one is how we will defend ourselves by using interest as an indicator. Yeah.
Yeah. What I'm saying that, for example, if you are using just as indicator that particular deciding rate and for underlying murabaha transaction, so then it would be allowed because it is a particular rate, not you are charging interest. For example, a reference as a reference, because if, for example, if anybody is lending a financial transaction and charging a particular reference of the rate, so you are doing under murabaha that particular reference. May I further explain like that? For example, if you have, there are two types of ijaratul aqar, yani lease of tenancy contract. Yeah. Okay. For example, if there is a tenancy, there is a big market, and in that particular area, all shops were of the, for example, liquor. All shops were liquor, and they were basically rented out at a particular rate. At a particular rate, like you can say that 7%. Now another shop was created. The owners thought that I am not going to sell in this shop liquor or alcohol, so I will have some drinks, but without alcoholic drinks. So I wanna get rental, the same rental which is the alcoholic shop's rental is, and usually parties will say that I will give the same rental because you are in that area. So you cannot charge the rental higher or lower than that particular area. So his intention is that he is not going to sell liquor, he's going to alcohol-free drinks in his shop, and he is going to lease that particular shop on the same rate which is in that area. So it is very similar to that.
You know, we should produce an indicator, for example, new indicator, based on real goods. If they are using liquor price as indicator, we can use, for example, indicator of milk.
Low, no.
Yeah.
Sheikh, liquor is not mal mutaqawwam.
You know.
In Sharia, liquor...
Or we can use, barley, or we can use...
No, barley is different.
We can
but
use,
I'm giving you example for haram,
Gold,
so I'm saying...
or silver.
Yeah, I understand your point. That, for example, if anybody is selling a haram thing and the other ones wants to sell a halal thing, but for that particular industry, the rate is particular thing is that, so then if the other parties agrees upon that rate, it is allowed.
Yeah, you know, that is a kind of answer using not Islamic basic. We are making a facet comparison. That is, we should discuss.
Yeah, but you know, majority of the scholars have recognized that and allowed that. But what I would say, that inshallah, once upon a time, inshallah, once you will have 90%, 99% Islamic bank, then you will create your own benchmark. But unless you have under the, you can say that like minority, like 10% to 5%, you cannot determine your own price.
If you are
otherwise, nobody will come for you with the transaction. If
you are in Edinburgh, majority of shops are selling beer. You can use might be over there. But you are in Islamabad or in a Muslim country, we should produce our own indicator.
Yeah,
not
we are doing.
Based on price of
we are working on it.
Or interest, or
we are working.
Yeah,
we are working on it.
We should work it.
Yeah,
that is a temporary fatwa based on mazara.
Yeah.
But that is not a real solution.
You are right. You are right.
Real solution, we should try to develop Islamic system.
Even we have developed. Even we have developed our own benchmark. But it's not as much as practiced. It was started, but it was not as much as practiced as we wanted. So we are, inshallah, in Turkey, and inshallah we will try that. Inshallah it will work out.
We have developed a benchmark for construction. 10 kilograms of iron, 1 bag of cement is accepted as a benchmark. And we use it in some cooperatives. And since 50 years, without any effect of inflation or interest.
Good.
Thank you.
I'm afraid we have to stop at this point. I'm sorry, we won't be able to get any other question due to the time limit. This is the end of the day, so we are concluding now. Please join me and thank our speakers once more for their precious time. Thank you again. And we do encourage everyone to join tomorrow's and the day after tomorrow's sessions at İstanbul Sabahattin Zaim University. Thank you all for coming. Oh yeah, there was a slight change in the time. So instead of, now we've changed it here in the invitation letter. It was before starting at 9 a.m. in the morning, but now it will be starting at 1:30 p.m. And that's the start of the session. Before that, we will have lunch. So if you are there, inshallah, at 12:30, you can have lunch and then join the session, inshallah. Thank you very much for coming.